Lloyd, coming to you, I wouldn't like to, close this session without picking your brains as I promised you. On You have been investing in a lot of companies, especially deep tech companies and consumer companies. And given your background with HP and with PepsiCo, it's a very rich kind of background. And of course, you're also involved in media. What are you looking at when you're looking at investors? What exactly, as an investor, when you're investing in these companies? Uh, what are you seeing? What are the kind of broad trends, a couple of trends that you can tell us, and the kind of mistakes probably these guys are making, or the good points that these guys are doing?
So I think two aspects that I kind of focus on, Dusty, whenever I make an investment. I think one is I insist and try and spend time and physical time, wherever possible with the promoters. I think to my mind, 80% of a lot of investments, or a large chunk, 80% maybe just a number I pulled out, is when the founder chemistry doesn't work well, or the founder per se has his track record is questionable. So I think for me, that is, let's say one of the key areas, even more than which sector. It's the quality of the promoter or the founder, the guy who's going to build the next big thing as he starts with. So I think that's one. The second thing I typically do is, and maybe it's an old consumer background, is insist on trying to understand who are his end consumers. I mean, every founder will tell you that the sun won't rise without my product, but until you get a handful of consumers that to some extent echo that sentiment, that really means nothing. So I think these are the two uh, primary kind of yardsticks I look at. In terms of sectors and businesses, for me, clearly it's this whole scalability, businesses that can scale, something as a service model that works. One area that I'm, right now, and possibly with a lot of my marketing background looking at is the whole area of digital fraud. Right, my first impulse was to focus on digital marketing fraud. Just to give you a sense, in the years I spent in marketing in PepsiCo and Motorola, our big spend was 90% of the money went on television and print. That was the big chunk, and everything else was a small add-on, right? Cinema and outdoor and radio, and digital, of course, was barely existing. Today, for most companies, the first installment, the first big chunk is digital, 50, 60%. If you look at, let's say, the biggest media property that went in the last 3 months, IPL, the big brands were all brands created in the last 10 years. The Dream 11s, the Creds, all new age brands. Now, with that, a lot of companies are using digital media agencies, right? So let's say in the past, if I wanted an upmarket educated clientele, I would pick an Economic Times or pick a Wall Street Journal or whatever. Today, I go to my digital media agency and they go through what is called a media exchange. Now, the media exchange looks at that demographic, looks at male 40 to 55, about monthly income of say 10 lakhs, or whatever, and says, hey, why do I need to spend money in the Wall Street Journal or Economic Times? This guy is also a great guy on, say, English Premier League. Or worse, he possibly serves porn at night. I can serve it to him there. Now, as a brand, that's a brand safety, brand concern. And today, as a marketer, I have no control. So my sense is digital fraud in general, not just advertising, but the extent of impersonation, or the fact that brands are so perverse. In the real world, if I see somebody impersonating my brand, I will have the police on his case, I have a case. In the digital world, it's happening all the while. And it's happening mainstream. Big banks, don't turn an eyelid. So I would say some of that's just some preliminary thoughts, Leslie.
Yeah. In fact, Lloyd, it's interesting you should say that, because many years ago we were working with a brand, and so this guy comes to us and says, "I need 50,000 followers on Facebook," and then one of my kids, turned around and said, "I can get him 50,000 followers for 25,000 bucks from Andheri. Will you accept it?" So this guy said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'm getting you 50,000. Then what are you going to do with it? What is it that you want to do with those 50,000? I mean, you want 50,000 is a number, or 50,000 appropriate is a number?" There are agencies today, there are shops in Delhi and Bombay and Calcutta who are going to give you the likes and the followers, whatever you want, whatever amplification you want, they'll give you. Okay. The problem that the brands have to solve is that how much does the digital marketer know himself to be able to drive that brand towards his target market. See, the fundamentals don't change.
Absolutely.
Okay, fundamentals of marketing don't change. Fundamentals of publishing don't change. All that has changed is the medium.
Correct.
And there, I completely agree. Digital fraud is probably going to be the next big thing. In fact, I would like to invest in a company which is, well, not doing digital fraud, but trying to figure out.
Absolutely. Also, because Subbu, what you're saying is real, because a lot of these new age companies, say a year or two down the line, which today have evaluations of say 20, $30 million or whatever, a fair amount of funding. Their idea of spreading the word is getting a couple of young fresh graduates, digital marketers, and they go out and say, okay, give me views, give me likes, give me, whatever.
Exactly.
And those guys do exactly what you're saying. It's a large commodity market. So you get likes from Turkey or whatever is the cheapest format. I was told in the last Lok Sabha in 2019, a lot of candidates, a lot of parties had a threshold that if you want to apply for a ticket from my party, you better have 10,000 followers. So people are actually just in the market for doing this kind of stuff. But more importantly, internet age founders today actually ask their marketing guy, what are the likes, what are the views I got, which have no relevance to their business, but that's become the show-off metric. And it's full of frauds. And, I think it's a big space. I totally
Yeah,
agree.
but honestly, we're talking about digital frauds. That's fine, but we had a bigger scam out in the offline media with the whole
Oh,
TRP
yes.
scam. So we all knew about how the set-top boxes were rigged, and I think both of you, since you all are veterans in that field and you all have tracked it more closely than me, you all know that this was not it was an ongoing issue. It just that
Yes.
it came to light. Somebody highlighted it, so it started becoming it was presented as a new issue. It was not
Yeah,
true.
I'm just happy that it came out. I'm just happy that it
Yeah.
came out. See,
Absolutely.
Was there.
everybody knew this elephant was there in the room. Everybody knew that this was going on. But it was inconvenient for anybody to call it out.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it is just that we found one person who was so, disliked universally. Okay,
Yes.
in the press. Okay, I mean there was a universal dislike. I mean,
Absolutely. Across political ideologies.
yeah, I mean he was that way he was very consistent. Okay, so and that he became the coat on which the hanger on which we're going to hang the coat. But has it been not happening for the last 10 years? We all know it has been happening. So I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the only solution there, and my point is, Leslie, we'll have to learn to live with it, is that when media has weaned themselves away from just advertisers' money. I know the New York Times has kind of successfully done it after a long time, but as long as you're dependent on advertisers, there is an incentive for a media owner to manipulate the results. It happens in the print IRS. Again, not widely talked about, but all the big players have their extent of some manipulation. It happens on television. So anytime the measurement is critical because your advertising money depends on it, it's likely to be manipulated.
Yeah. You wrote an interesting piece, Lloyd, that consumers are at the heart of the digital transformation. Now, I think we clearly all believe that is the case. But, I find it a little, a kind of self-contradictory statement. Because here, on the one hand, when we talk about digital, most people mistake it for, the deep technology, confuse it with the technology without keeping an eye on the consumer. Are you so when you're looking at these companies that you are investing in and the whole universe, both even Subbu and all have been entrepreneurs, we have all seen these kind of trends. Are you seeing a kind of at least a shift in this whole balancing act? Like, okay, now people are talking less about technology and saying, okay, what are the problems that we solve? Because everybody keeps on pointing out that technology has to solve business problems. It's not an end in itself. Yes, we know that, but is it really happening?
I think the process has begun, trying to base business success on real problem solutions, on real insights. I think that process has begun. The initial surge was a lot saying that technology can do it all. I think now marrying a real problem to a solution, building it on real insight is real. What is not happening, and possibly will take maybe a decade or more, is this astute, this kind of skewed valuations. The fact that a moment a person begins to solve one small solution in one sector, you assume that this can overnight magnify into a million X. And I think that is something that, until a lot more people burn their fingers, that reality won't come. So there's a vast belief in what is the potential this can disrupt the world. For me, example, a little, if I look at, let's say, what credit results were, right? Fantastic company. I think what they're solving for is powerful. The fact that a lot of credit card transactions are passing to them is powerful. But then looking at what seasoned investors believe in what they can do in 2-3 years sometimes startles, because everyone expects them to have an Amazon kind of hockey stick. And I think that is something that has to wait and watch, specifically in a financial sector where sooner than later you're going to expect to compete in a global market. It's not going to be an India credit card only scenario. So I think that aspect of a lot of investors' bets is a little warning. So it's the same set of speculators that at one time were active in the market who kind of find this, the startup ecosystem in a sense, 1,000x far more rewarding than a market which is more in the 10x range. And that speculation shift has kind of happened. And that is a bit of a concern in the startup ecosystem.
Subbu, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it is the romanticism of a Facebook valuation in those kind of stories, which really spur the imagination of most of the entrepreneurs. Having said that, I think the VCs are right today, that the current crop of VCs that I see are a lot more hardened souls. They probably know that technology for the heck of it is not going to cut it. But see, you do have some outliers. Okay, you do have some outliers which suddenly come up, and they become the talk of the town, and then somebody decides to put $100 million in it, and then the spreadsheet effect takes over. Okay, and the spreadsheet. So when we talk about valuation, it is essentially the spreadsheet effect. Okay, because nobody is even if the company is valued at $3 billion or $5 billion, it's meaningless because nobody is going to cut a check of $5 billion. Right? I think this trend is not going to go away. Today, I mean, there will always be the romanticism of the valuation. There will always be somebody who will say, okay, let me chase the 1000x, okay, and let me not, play safe and play in the debt market. So there will be these kind of guys. But I think by and large, see, there's one shift that has happened already, which is that people no longer fund PowerPoints. Okay, they don't even fund prototypes.
Yeah.
Like I like what Lloyd said, that if you're saying that my customers believe that sun won't rise without my product, show me a few customers. Now that is an important statement to hear, which means as a VC, as an investor, he's saying, I believe you, but I want to believe in your product, right? Which means you have to have a product.
Yeah.
Even if it is version 1, that doesn't matter. Yeah, you have to have a product. So PowerPoint days are over, prototype days are over. Now the product has to be there. You have to demonstrate. Okay. Now after that, can you wish away the romanticism? No, I don't think so.
No, but
The younger,
I think
the youngster will
even on the romanticism, I think one point that you also have pointed out earlier, and many others also have pointed out, that many of these buyouts that have happened, the acquisitions that have happened, they're basically it's cash and stock options.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like people get carried away by the end number and they don't realize it.
Facebook is a very classic example. $19 billion that they paid for WhatsApp. It's $4 billion cash.
Exactly.
$15 billion swap. Okay, so the cash component is for that, and that's why I said the spreadsheet takes over. Okay, and then you say that okay, it's a $19 billion deal. Well, it is a $19 billion deal. Nobody's questioning it. It's a $4 billion cash deal.
They have to be clear. I think because that romanticism part of it can be stemmed if people really understand the difference. I think they need to spend some time understanding.
There, I would put the charge completely at the doorstep of the journalists.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is true.
No journalist ever pointed that out. We had to read the fine print and figure it out. See, a lot of these stories get created and spread by our own brothers and sisters.
True. Yeah.
Okay? And 80% of them don't even understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
Which is what I call lazy journalism. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when somebody says, this company is now worth $100 billion, I mean, okay, it's $100 billion on what basis?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think those are questions that the editor must ask. And these stories are primarily coming from journalists only.
True.
And they get picked up by WhatsAppers and it gets spread around, but the origin is the journalist.
But an interesting trend aligned to what you've been saying, Subbu, and is interesting, is that in a sense, the early stage money pickings today have become relatively easier. Just to give you a small example, an angel network I'm part of, they talked about this interesting phenomena, saying in Bangalore in the 90s, the first set of dollar millionaires were the Infosys dollar millionaires, people who made money when Infosys went public. The last set of dollar millionaires in Bangalore particularly were a lot of kids in their 20s and 30s who cashed out when Walmart physically bought
Yeah.
Flipkart.
Flipkart.
Now, these are kids, and just I'm losing a loose metaphor here, they're late 20s, early 30s, who in a sense overnight got, let's say, 5 to 7 crores in their bank. Now, they're unlikely, unlike the Infosys dollar millionaires of the 90s, to go back and open a fixed deposit. In fact, they're even unlikely to even look at a mutual fund, right? They're
Absolutely.
saying that, okay, I've got now 3 crores to play, right? So I'm going to put 10 lakhs in every. Now, I was part of an angel network that I obviously won't name, where the average retired CXO, etc., was thinking innumerable times before making a 5 lakh or a ticket 10 lakh investment. 2 months, 2 due diligence calls, meeting promoters, folks like me. And these kids were signing in a half-hour pitch. They were saying, okay, 5 lakh dal diya. And that was startling. Now, what happens is they're bridging the gap between these, the loose PowerPoint, as you said, and somebody now getting onto a trajectory saying, okay, now I can hit that 50 crore revenue. And that's when the big, the Sequoias of the world can jump in. So that ecosystem, to my mind, is, the pipeline is thick, it's robust, but it's not heavy on due diligence, right? For a young person, you don't think twice, right? I made 3 crores out of a well-cashed deal.
Easy money.
Easy money. And they're willing to invest. So that is fueling, in a sense, good way. It's fueling entrepreneurship. But it's also not well thought through. And maybe I'm just speaking from a perspective of an older person, but that's the big, the fresh elephant in the room. And that's something VCs have, yet to come to terms with.
But Lloyd, the interesting thing is, for everything that happens, there are, elements that are good, elements that are bad.
Mhm.
When I said PowerPoint is not getting funded, I realize the fact that 99% of the PowerPoints may not have been worth funding, but there will always be that 1% PowerPoint, okay, the entrepreneur who's got this great idea, okay, and he's got this great concept, he's got everything in his head, which is fundable.
Yes.
Now, when you stop funding PowerPoints, you stop funding that also.
Yes.
Now, these kids, the latter day millionaires who are coming, are maybe, perhaps, helping fund those outliers, that 1%.
Yes.
They may be understanding it better. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
I think to that extent, it's a good risk that they are taking.
Yes.
Like any other risk reward system, yes, there will be a 90-10, 95-5, win loss or loss win ratio,
Sure.
and they're willing to live with it because there's like you said, 3 crores is the money to play with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know, we always say that, given our age group, I don't know how many of us would have, invested in an Instagram initially. I mean, we would have not even thought, and probably not even bought into the idea, kind of stuff. They what people putting photographs over there, plenty of things.
Absolutely.
So, but you
So
still
therefore,
have an
younger people,
Instagram. Yeah.
so Leslie, younger people coming into the startup ecosystem as investors is a positive thing. I'm totally for it.
Very positive.
Their risk appetite is larger, and their fear of failure is much less. So
Yes,
a lot of the
exactly.
lot of the early stage promoters I work with, their issues. I can switch back from my so-called Beamer back to my bike, right, with no loss of face, right? Which an older promoter obviously has got family and has got too many kind of pillars to kind of bow to. They're more nimble in that way, right? Completely concede that. That's a very positive step.
I should give you an anecdote. So I was interviewing this kid, a couple of months back, and this was the Zoom interview.
Mhm.
So very, very full of beans, and that's kid, and he said that I just my business didn't do well, so I'm just shutting it down because of COVID. I'm looking for an job. So I asked him. I said, so what is it? What's about you? Okay. He was so proud. His chest puffed. He said, "I'm a serial failure."
Very
That
interesting.
pride. Okay.
Mhm.
In my time, if I were a failure, I probably wouldn't have got married. Okay. I mean, it's only after marriage my wife figured that I'm a failure. So to that extent, I was lucky, But these days, these guys carry it on their arm. I mean, they actually believe that it's a good thing,
Yes.
and that's a very, very healthy trait.
So what would be the expression now? Earlier I used to say he has a chip on his shoulder. What would you say he's carrying on his shoulder today? So viewers, I hope you enjoyed this discussion. We had a discussion on these 4 topics. One, of course, who let the dogs out. the Dogecoin issue, then the Safer Internet Day, where we segued into the whole social media responsibility versus governments. And then, of course, we picked Lloyd's brain on the whole startup community, the investor, how VCs look at companies. And the more interesting part is, I think, the consistent messaging that is here, that we require young people, especially our young viewers who are watching us, we require you very much to create the next Instagram or the next TikTok or whatever it be,
Or fail creating it.
or fail creating.
Yes, yes, well
And
said.
and please look at the Atmanirbhar campaigns of India and try to create something in India which is not a closed loop kind of thing, but which gives you the power of the internet kind of.
Which is
So
cool and not just cool.
Absolutely. Lloyd, once again, thank you very much for your time and for your insights. Subbu, thank you as usual.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you
Lloyd.
very much, Leslie. Wonderful
Yeah,
being here.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Subbu. Wonderful,
you.
wonderful
Thank you.
chatting.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.